Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of the biggest myths you see out there with weight training, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And it came up in a video I did the other day of someone said, hey, you were talking about how the barbell is better than dumbbells, but you failed to mention the big benefit that dumbbells, because you have the same weight in each hand, allow for more even development. And actually, nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, dumbbells actually have the potential for worse adjustments in compensatory strength, and it's not apparently obvious when you just think about it off the top of your head. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And in this case, I'm not going to make fun of anyone. We're not going to call anyone ignorant or anything else, but we do need to be honest that a lot of people kind of fall for gimmicks like this. And what they don't understand is that we all start imbalanced. You start out really, really imbalanced. You have, if you're right-handed, your right arm and chest and back and everything are probably considerably stronger than your left when you first join the gym. And unless you do something to correct that, usually resistance training does, because what ends up happening, your weight training will put you under way more stress and way more development than anything you've ever done up until that point in your life. So those strength imbalances, if you train correctly, are going to sort themselves very, very quickly. Now, when you think about what do we consider base strength? Base strength is usually, most men within a few months of joining a gym on any proper training program are going to tend to be able to bench at least 135, right? A full plate per side for reps. Now, ideally, on all of my programs, I want to see most of you at the end of a year, year and a half, repping 2 plates a side, right, on the bench. And that's normal on my free programs. That's normal. It's perfectly normal if you eat and train correctly. A lot of people, that might sound insane, but that's where it is. And we could get into all these other things. We could get into shoulders, back, all that. But let's just discuss the most common one, and that's going to be chest, right? Bench pressing in general. What you need to realize is that with dumbbells, the weight tends to be more centered. In other words, minor shifts in the weight can change the way that you balance it a little bit more, and you have more propensity for the hands to drift in and out. You have more propensity for shifts in your hands to accommodate your compensatory strength, to accommodate your strong side or your weak side. With a barbell, the weights are all the way out on the end. In other words, when you have 135 in the bar, how much of the weight do you think is actually inside your hands? Even on a wider grip bench, there's at most 10 pounds. There's at most 10 pounds directly above you. Everything is on the ends. The overwhelming majority of the weight, and the stronger you get, the more pronounced this becomes, is outside of your hands. So in other words, even if something shifts a minor amount, it isn't significantly changing the amount of weight that's in either hand. It really isn't, because the weight is out on the ends. It's not even directly above your hands like with dumbbells. It's actually out on the ends, further out. That actually means that in terms of that balance, it really doesn't impact you significantly that it's connected with a bar in the middle. But what does happen is that it locks your spacing in. In other words, our hands we can't see more chest adduction on one side than the other on a barbell. If something shifts one way, you're going to feel it and notice it, more so than with dumbbells, right? With dumbbells, little changes, we don't feel them as much. So what ends up happening, it allows for your stronger side to take over more. It also means that you won't notice that your technique is messing up more. In other words, you start with a stronger side than a weak side. If you do nothing but dumbbells and you come in and you start training with dumbbells for your chest, what happens? Because you can't always see it at the bottom. You're not watching it, and you don't have the big bars on the end to see the difference in your left to right. People don't notice it as much. You're going to tend to come a little lower on your strong side, aren't you? Right? People are going to tend to use another ½ inch or inch of range of motion on their strong side. Well, where is the hardest part of any sort of chest press? At the very bottom. There's the most tension placed on the pecs. So if your stronger side goes a little lower, and particularly as you get closer to failure, what happens? Your form adjusts, and you're going to tend to come not quite as low on your weaker side so that it can be at the same number of reps as the right. You're going to tend to not come as low. You're going to tend to shift. You get that little bit of compensatory strength where you shift under the weight instead of planting yourself hard into the bench. When you plant yourself very, very hard into the bench and you dig in, you can't slide under the weight. So a proper setup where you set in tight actually prevents most of the concern for imbalances. Because what happens? How do we get imbalances? Compensatory strength. In other words, when you start taking sets to failure and you grind, but you grind in a way to where you shift under the weight. Like let's say you do 3 sets of bench press every time you train. Every time you go to the gym, you do 3 sets of bench press. And on the last rep, you grind that last rep out each time. So you come down and then every time you shift a little bit so that you force the weight over several inches. If you do that with a barbell or a dumbbell, you get the same effect because you're making one side easier than the other. So that's actually what creates the imbalance on the bench press. Right? That's what creates chest and tricep imbalances from chest pressing, is that slide you do under it. That's the biggest culprit. If you do that on the last rep on every single set, what happens? That means the right side, let's say you're shifting under it like this way, like you go to this side a little bit for that last rep to grind it out. That means the right side ends up doing more work, an extra rep every single set. That's 3 extra reps every workout. Let's say you're benching 3 times a week. That's 9 extra reps a week that the right side is doing. In the grand scheme of things, that's going to start adding up because it's working harder. The other side isn't contributing as much on that last rep, really. Those additional muscle fibers and additional work that the strong side is doing is going to keep it stronger, and it's going to keep it bigger, and that will create the imbalance. Now, people will say, well, won't the dumbbells fix that? No, because you have the same weight over each hand anyways on a barbell. There's very little in the middle. It's out on the ends. It's not like your left side has less weight on it just because there's 10 pounds in the middle and you adjust a little bit. It really doesn't. But your hand placement can't change as much with the barbell. It locks you in tighter once you grip that bar. So it's actually a little bit harder to do the side shifting. People still do. People do it on machines, right? So even a machine doesn't fix it. So if you're doing that little bit of shift that people do, that's what's creating it. And what happens when you get under dumbbells? The effect is more pronounced. The effect on dumbbells can be even more pronounced because you have a slightly more ambiguous range of motion for each side because you don't have the same chest touch. You'll tend to go deeper on your stronger side, and that little slide is going to have more impact on the overall technique and the loading left to right. So if anything, people who are using bad form are having that problem. It's going to become more pronounced. In other words, if you've created an imbalance with bad form on a barbell, it's even easier to use that bad form on a dumbbell. You're going to actually make your imbalance even worse. The issue is technique. The issue is not setting up tight enough. That's what's causing the left to right imbalance. It's not the fact that you have uneven weights on each side, because you really don't. You don't. So dumbbells are not going to fix this problem. They're not going to fix this problem. Your solution would be, I don't know, things like weighted dips. You can't slide the same on a weighted dip because your whole body's having to move through space. Or you have to learn to set up more tight on the bench press. You dig yourself in. You dig your traps into the bench. You ratchet your lower body up to where you dig your feet in. You plant your ass and your traps hard on the bench and you dig in tight. You ratchet up tight. When you do that, it makes it harder to do that little side shift. And that's the other thing, quit grinding. I understand that people need to learn how to grind for powerlifting meets. I'm not going to argue that they don't. You do need to learn to grind if you're going to go compete in a meet. You do, because you're going to hit a true max. It's a valuable skill to learn, but you shouldn't be doing it every time you train, because that form breakdown is what causes people to use more compensatory strength instead of both sides doing the same work each time so that the weaker side catches up. Grinding to where your form breaks down in any way causes compensatory strength to have the strong side do more work. And if the strong side does more work, it's going to continue to stay the strong side. That's going to lead to muscle imbalances. So when you grind with dumbbells, again, it's going to be even worse. So when people try to tell you stuff like dumbbells will fix left to right imbalances, that's not addressing the cause of the imbalances. It's not going to fix it. It's going to make it worse. It's complete absurdity. And you could extrapolate that out to other exercises. Start thinking about when you do one-arm exercises. Think of the potential difference for technique and form and compensatory strength when you do one arm at a time. How much do you think you perfectly replicate the exact range of motion and body movement and everything when you're doing a one-arm row? or a one-arm curl, of how much cheating you're doing unless you've locked yourself in which case you're going to get less muscle growth because isolation produces less muscle growth in general. What's going to happen? You don't think the potential is even greater? Of course it is. At least with a barbell, you can watch to see that, hey, I'm keeping the bar fairly even left or right. Other people can see and tell you, hey, you know, you have one side that's dipping more than the other. Other people can tell you that. They can address it for you. It can be easily seen. When you start doing one-arm dumbbell work, you lose the ability to assess that completely. You could be using a completely different technique, different range of motion, tempo on the weaker side so that you're able to complete the same number of reps as the stronger side. Again, you're going to continue to exacerbate your imbalances. This isn't useful at all. It's not. It's not. Doing big movements with good form and proper setups and proper tightness is one of the best tools you have to prevent and correct muscle imbalances, at least as far as unilateral goes. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.